Okay, so imagine this. You walk into this massive warehouse, like 1 million square feet.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just packed from floor to ceiling with stuff, you name it, electronics, clothes, even fire pits.
Sounds like a shopper's paradise.
Except it's all just sitting there collecting dust because of
tariffs.
Right, those taxes on imported goods.
It's like a giant game of trade war Tetris, and nobody knows what the next move is.
And the crazy thing is this is happening right now. Businesses are trying to figure out how to deal with these potential tariffs that President Trump is considering on goods from
China, Mexico, Canada, you name it.
So in this deep dive, we're going to take a look at how companies are preparing for this trade war and what it could mean for you, the consumer.
Because ultimately, it's your wallet that's on the line.
If you want to know more about how these tariffs could impact your life, hit that subscribe button. We'll be breaking it all down for you.
Yeah, and one of the things we're seeing right now is this phenomenon called front-loading.
Front-loading?
Yeah, basically, companies are importing and stockpiling goods like crazy.
Before the tariffs hit.
Exactly. They're trying to avoid those higher costs.
Smart move.
It's like a massive shopping spree before the prices skyrocket.
Like stocking up on all your favorite snacks before they disappear from the shelves.
Pretty much. And the numbers are pretty mind-blowing.
Oh yeah, like Walmart, for example.
What'd they do?
Their imports from China have gone up 33% in just a year.
Wow. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and Columbia Sportswear saw an even bigger jump, like 50%.
That's incredible, but it also shows you the advantage that larger companies have.
How so?
Resources, they have the money to front load and absorb those extra costs, at least for a while.
And maybe even use it to their advantage.
Right. They could potentially gain a competitive edge over smaller businesses that can't afford to stockpile as much.
So it's like the big guys versus the little guys.
In a way, yeah.
And that makes me wonder, what about those smaller businesses? Can they even play this game?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Take Deer Stags, for instance.
Deer Stags?
Yeah, they're a family-run shoe company, and they just don't have the same kind of resources as a Walmart.
Nice.
They can't afford to front-load on the same scale, and they're already dealing with some pretty hefty tariffs on their shoes.
You're kidding.
Nope. Some of them go all the way back to the 1930s.
Wow. So they're really feeling the pinch.
Absolutely. These new tariffs could be a major blow to their pricing and their ability to compete.
It really makes you think about the brands you support, doesn't it?
Yeah. Are they big enough to weather the storm? What happens to your favorite smaller businesses?
If this is making you think about your shopping habits.
It's a good question to ask yourself, and it gets even more complicated when you consider that Mexico is now the U.S.'s largest trading partner.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they've surpassed China.
So what does that mean for all this tariff talk?
Well, it means that slapping tariffs on Mexican goods could have a massive ripple effect.
Like what kind of ripple effect?
We're talking increased costs and delays for goods crossing the border, and potentially even retaliatory tariffs from Mexico.
Oh man, that could hurt U.S. companies and jobs.
It's a domino effect, one tariff triggering another, and it's hard to see who comes out on top in this scenario.
And our sources have given us some really specific examples of how this could play out.
Like what?
Well, for instance, Mexico produces millions of vehicles for the U.S. market. So imagine what could happen to car prices.
Yikes.
And then there's Canada, our other major trading partner. They supply us with essential resources like petroleum and chlorine for our drinking water.
So these tariffs could literally affect everything.
From the cars we drive to the water we drink.
It really shows you how complex this whole trade war thing is.
And how interconnected we all are.
Exactly. You can't isolate one trading partner without feeling the tremors throughout the entire system.
It's like pulling on a loose thread in a sweater, and you never know how much will unravel.
It really makes you think about, the global supply chain and all that.
Yeah, and our sources actually took us inside this huge warehouse in Fort Worth, Texas. It's like a major hub for logistics companies. Well, they're seeing firsthand how businesses are trying to get ahead of these potential tariffs by stockpiling goods.
So basically front-loading in action.
Exactly. And this warehouse is just bursting at the seams with products from China and Mexico, everything from electronics to infrastructure components to everyday stuff like sweatshirts.
Wow, so it's like a microcosm of the global economy all under one roof. As
we were talking about earlier, those larger companies, they have the resources to really dominate this front-loading game.
Right. Economies of scale and all that.
Yeah, like IT's Logistics, they're a leading U.S. shipper, and they've seen a surge in clients bringing in products to avoid the tariffs.
They must be making a killing.
I'm sure they're doing all right. Their revenue's around $1 billion, so they definitely have the scale to make these kinds of strategic moves.
Makes sense. And they also mentioned something that I thought was really interesting, the impact on infrastructure projects.
How so?
Well, because those budgets are set years in advance, a sudden 20% increase in the cost of goods could really throw a wrench in the works.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those projects rely heavily on imported components.
And the source material specifically called out things like solar panels, AI server racks, backup power supplies, lithium batteries.
All the building blocks of a modern infrastructure.
Exactly. And tariffs could really create a major roadblock.
So it's not just about consumer goods then?
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's much broader than that. And it's not just the big players who are stockpiling either. Even everyday items like those smokeless fire pits we were talking about earlier.
They're filling up warehouse shelves too.
Yep. It's a reminder that these tariffs could impact our backyard barbecues, so to speak.
So front-loading, it seems like a strategy that benefits some more than others.
Definitely. While the Walmarts of the world can stockpile with ease, smaller importers are feeling the squeeze.
Yeah, we were talking about Deer Stags earlier, that family-owned shoe company.
Right. Our sources actually spoke with Rick Muscat, the president of the company, and he painted a very different picture. Well, unlike Walmart, with their vast network of warehouses and trucking fleets, Deer Stags just doesn't have the capacity to front load on the same scale.
It's a classic David and Goliath situation.
Exactly. And Muscat even pointed out that Walmart, with their huge buying power, can charter entire cargo ships to import goods.
Smaller companies just can't compete with that.
And we have to remember that shoe companies are already facing a ton of tariffs, some of them dating back to the 1930s.
It's crazy how many layers there are to this.
There are literally hundreds of duty classifications for different types of shoes.
Hundreds.
Yeah, Muscat gave us a specific example. Men's shoes with leather uppers already face a 16% duty.
Wow.
So imagine adding another 25% on top of that.
Ouch, that would be a huge hit.
The source material actually painted this pretty nightmarish scenario. Imagine you're a shoe company and you have 200,000 pairs of shoes already on the way from China.
And then, boom, a new tariff is announced.
Who absorbs that extra cost?
Yeah.
How do you adjust your pricing when the goods are already in transit?
It's a logistical nightmare.
And ultimately, those costs trickle down to the consumer.
We're all part of this interconnected system, whether we like it or not.
Muscat actually shared an invoice from U.S. Customs that showed his company paying thousands of dollars in tariffs for just one shipment of shoes.
Thousands.
Yeah, and that money comes directly out of their account, not the Chinese manufacturers.
So they're the ones taking the hit.
It really highlights who bears the burden of these trade wars.
And we've been talking a lot about China, but remember, Mexico is our biggest trading partner now.
Right, and tariffs on Mexican goods could really disrupt that relationship.
I mean, think about all the stuff we get from Mexico: avocados, tomatoes, corn.
All those prices could go up.
And let's not forget about the auto industry. Mexico is a major producer of vehicles for the U.S. market.
So we could see higher prices for new cars, longer wait times, even job losses.
It's like a chain reaction.
It all comes back to the fact that trade wars have consequences that reach far beyond the boardroom.
And they affect real people in very real ways.
We're all interconnected in this global economy. It's like a giant spider web. You tug on one strand and the whole thing vibrates.
And speaking of interconnectedness, what do you think about the potential for retaliatory tariffs?
Oh man, that's a whole other can of worms.
I mean, if the U.S. imposes tariffs on Mexico, they've already hinted that they'll hit back, potentially targeting U.S. companies operating in Mexico, especially automakers.
It's a dangerous game of economic brinkmanship.
And we can't forget that China and European countries could retaliate as well.
It's easy to get caught up in the political rhetoric, but it's important to remember that there are real people and businesses caught in the crosshairs of these decisions.
So what do you think about all this? Do you see tariffs as a necessary evil, a bargaining chip, or a recipe for economic disaster? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
And if you're finding this discussion insightful, don't forget to give us a like. It helps others find this information and join the conversation.
Yeah, it's really wild when you think about it. All, decisions made in some fancy office can have a real impact on people's lives, like the price of avocados.
It all comes back to that interconnectedness we were talking about.
This whole thing about tariffs, it's been a real learning experience for me.
Me too.
We've seen how companies are scrambling to adapt, the winners and losers and all the ripple effects.
And how it could impact every corner of the economy.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The consumer often ends up paying the price.
Yeah, in the end, it's our wallets that take the hit.
Higher prices on everything from our morning coffee to those new cars.
It's something we all need to be aware of, especially as these trade policies keep evolving.
So as we wrap things up, maybe we can leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
Sounds good.
Given everything we've talked about, do you think tariffs are an effective way to protect American businesses and jobs?
That's a tough one.
It's a complex issue. No easy answers.
But it's a conversation we need to keep having, for sure.
Absolutely.
If you found this episode insightful, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like.
It really helps others find this content and join the discussion.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of trade wars and tariffs.
We'll continue to bring you these in-depth explorations of the issues that matter most.
Until next time, stay curious.